Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to fundamentally change the way you approach learning. If you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by the prospect of picking up a new hobby, learning a new language, or finally mastering that tool you bought ages ago, you are in the exact right place. We're going to replace that fist-pounding frustration with a proven, highly effective framework derived straight from Josh Kaufman's insights on rapid skill acquisition. So, get ready to rethink absolutely everything you thought you knew about the learning curve.
Okay, let's dive right in. I want you to think about your someday or maybe list. You know the one, right? That mental list of all the incredible things you want to do someday? Write a novel, play the guitar, learn to code, finally speak conversational Spanish. Now, what usually stops you from actually starting? Well, for almost everyone, it boils down to two massive barriers: a perceived lack of time and a lack of baseline skill. We constantly tell ourselves, I'll get around to it when life slows down. But let's be honest with ourselves here. Life rarely ever slows down, does it?
And then there's this incredibly intimidating number hanging over our heads. You've likely heard of Malcolm Gladwell's famous rule, popularized in his book Outliers, which says that it takes this staggering amount of time, 10,000 hours of deliberate practice, to truly master something. When we hear that, it just instantly kills our motivation. Think about it. If it takes the equivalent of a full-time job for 5 straight years just to get good at something, why even bother starting?
Part 1. The 10,000-hour myth. Let's bust this massive psychological barrier right now. Here is the crucial takeaway. 10,000 hours? That is for becoming the next Tiger Woods or a chess grandmaster. It's the uncompromising requirement for ultra-competitive, world-class mastery. But what if you don't want to be Tiger Woods? What if you just want to play a decent round of golf on a Sunday without embarrassing yourself? Reaching what we call a target performance level, where you can do a skill well enough for your own personal goals and actually enjoy it, takes just 20 hours of smart, deliberate effort. That's it. That is literally about 45 minutes a day for a single month.
Part 2. Rapid skill acquisition. Now that we've dramatically lowered the bar from world-class perfection to personal sufficiency, let's figure out how to make those 20 hours count.
It's super important to draw a line between these two concepts before we go any further. Learning grammar rules from a textbook in a classroom is vastly different from the actual skill acquisition of holding a live conversation with native speakers. Academic learning is great for self-correction, figuring out why you made a mistake, but it absolutely cannot replace contextual practice. If you actually want to acquire a skill, you've got to get your hands dirty and practice it in the real world.
So how do we do this? Rapid skill acquisition relies on a concrete 4-step methodology. First, you deconstruct the skill, breaking it down into smaller, manageable subskills. Second, you do just enough research to spot your own mistakes as you're practicing. No endless reading, just enough to self-correct. Third, you absolutely must eliminate the physical and emotional distractions that stop you from sitting down to work. And fourth, you push through that initial frustration barrier by committing upfront to practice for at least 20 hours.
Part 3. Principles of effective learning. Let's explore how to support those 4 steps so you practice intelligently.
What's really interesting here is how counterintuitive some of these principles are. Take inversion, for example. Instead of imagining perfect success, you imagine the absolute worst-case scenario. Say you want to learn whitewater kayaking. The opposite of what you want is flipping upside down, flooding your kayak, and losing your paddle. By imagining that utter disaster, you instantly identify the exact safety and survival subskills you need to learn first. You also want to just jump into the research even if it's totally confusing, completely eliminate your phone and TV distractions, and practice strictly by the clock, in short 20-minute bursts so you don't burn out.
Part 4. The power law of practice. Let's look at exactly what happens to your brain and body when you start applying these focused principles. The power law of practice shows us something amazing. The time it takes you to perform a task drops off a cliff the exact moment you begin practicing. In those first few hours, your brain is fundamentally rewiring itself, creating brand new neural pathways. You rapidly go from grossly incompetent, where everything feels like it takes forever, to noticeably competent. The vast majority of your speed and efficiency gains happen right there, right at the very beginning. And if you flip how you think about it, you get the famous learning curve. People complain about a steep learning curve all the time, as if it's this terrifying bad thing. But a steep curve is actually fantastic. It means you're acquiring the skill incredibly fast per unit of time during those initial 20 hours. You get good very quickly before the rate of improvement eventually tapers off into a much slower training phase.
Part 5. Case study. Demystifying yoga. Let's ground all this theory in reality by applying the 20-hour framework to a highly misunderstood practice.
So the author, Josh, was initially highly skeptical of the mystical kind of woo-woo culture surrounding yoga. He didn't care about aligning his chakras, and he certainly wasn't buying into the high-fashion yoga apparel industry. But by doing his research and talking to real practitioners, he found grounding quotes like this one from TKV Desikachar. This profoundly helped him redefine his target performance level. He realized he didn't need to become some competitive contortionist. He simply needed a practice that relieved his chronic back pain and improved his daily life.
Through his initial research into the anatomy of yoga, he stumbled on a powerful visual metaphor. He learned about this scary stuff called fuzz that literally grows on unused muscles overnight. It sounds like delicious cotton candy, but it is actually your flexibility's worst enemy. If you don't move, it thickens and limits your mobility. Learning about this biological reality provided immense, tangible motivation for him. It was the absolute perfect reason to break through his initial practice barriers and just get on the mat.
By jumping completely in over his head into the history, he thoroughly deconstructed the skill. He realized that modern, athletic yoga is actually a relatively recent invention. Sure, the philosophy dates back to ancient Vedic priests in 3300 BC and the scholar Patanjali, but the flowing gymnastic sequences we know today, those were largely developed in the 1930s by Krishnamacharya. And here's the real kicker. He designed them for energetic young boys and everyday people, not ancient ascetics living in remote caves. Stripping away all the intimidation, the complex terminology, and the spiritual complexity, he successfully deconstructed the entire physical discipline into a beautifully simple equation. Yoga is essentially breathing, combined with movement and a mindful mental state. By breaking it down into these 3 core subskills, he realized it was something absolutely anyone could practice efficiently in their own living room. That completely removed the massive emotional and physical barrier of having to commute to some expensive studio.
So we've fully broken down the methodology. Now that the 10,000-hour myth is completely shattered and you hold the definitive playbook for rapid skill acquisition, the only question left is this. If 20 hours is literally all it takes to completely transform your capabilities, what exactly is your excuse for not starting today? Pick a project, set your timer for 20 minutes, and embrace the steep part of the curve. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will see you next time.